Hi, I'm Suzanne Turner, and welcome to a podcast delving into the personal narratives within the clinical research industry. Through candid interviews, we'll learn about the personal journeys and motivations of individuals who have chosen this profession, what I like to call their why. This podcast is not just for industry insiders. It's for everyone curious about the human side of healthcare. Beyond the industry's negative reputation, we'll shed light on the dedicated professionals behind clinical trials. Join us as we uncover the heart and passion of those working tirelessly behind the scenes in clinical research. Welcome to Heart of the Trial. Hello, lovely listeners, and welcome to Heart of the Trial, where we dive into the human side of healthcare, highlighting the voices often left out of the spotlight. I'm your host, Suzanne Turner, and in this episode, we're joined by Rudy Malle, a dynamic clinical research professional whose journey spans over 15 years, from site roles to CROs, pharma, and now career coaching. Rudy brings a 360-degree view of the industry and a deep passion for mentoring the next generation of clinical leaders. We dive into his unconventional path, lessons learned from every stage, and how he's now helping others break into and grow within the field. I hope you enjoy, and until next time, stay curious and stay compassionate. Well, hello and welcome to Heart of the Trial, Rudy.
Hi, I'm so glad to be here, Susan. Thanks for having me.
Oh, I'm so thrilled to have you. I think this is going to be a fantastic discussion.
Absolutely.
And what I would like to start is, why don't you introduce yourself to our listeners and tell them what it is that you do?
Absolutely. My name is Rudy Malle. I am a clinical research professional with over 15 years of experience in the industry. I've had an opportunity of working at a site, from a site to a CRO to pharma. I usually call myself a 360 degrees of clinical research. I've held multiple roles and multiple hats. Right now, I'm a career coach with YANA Careers. What we do, we help clinical research professionals. We help those who want to break into the industry, and of course those who are in the industry who want to elevate themselves to do leadership positions in clinical research. So I'm glad to be here.
Well, that's a very interesting path. So let's talk about how you took that. So you started working at a site, is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay, so tell me about that, how you got into the industry and started working at sites.
It's so funny because I wasn't even a science major at all. I was a business guy. I did business. I had done nursing in the past, but I just never used that skill. Then I did business. After business school, I was a marketing manager for a tech company. Then afterwards, I'm like, you know what? My family kept saying, it's healthcare has a promising future and all that stuff. I'm like, all right, let's try that. I was actually a medical assistant. I completed a medical assistant program for 9 months. I went to the site, to a clinic, to do my internship. So I did the internship. Obviously, the patient loved me. They wanted me to be there. And they said, doctor, hire this guy. So they ended up hiring me as a medical assistant. I was a medical assistant for about 3 months.
Not very long.
Not very long, right? I was a medical assistant for about 3 months. Interestingly, the site was a small clinic. They had clinical trials. They had just started clinical trials. And it sparked my curiosity. I was always called to the clinical trials department to help out. So I would go there, help with blood sample, help patient care, all that. I'm like, what is this trial thing you guys keep doing? They said, it's clinical trials, the whole thing, the medicine, drug development. And I'm like, that sounds interesting. I want to learn more about this. So, I got introduced to it, and that's how my career kind of started. I got into the clinical trials, started helping that, took some training, took some courses, advanced myself, took some other, coaching programs, and voila.
And just like that. So where did you go after the sites then? So you did these programs, and so what was that next step?
So after the program, I completed the program, I had incurred some debt. So I went to my doctor. That I was a small site in Queens, in New York. So I went to the doctor. I said, "Hey, doctor, now I'm more experienced. I have about a year and a half experience working with you guys in clinical trials. I feel like I should get more compensated, all that stuff." He was like, he was a little hesitant. So obviously, I looked for career growth. I got an opportunity working at Cornell in Manhattan, which is an academic center. I worked at Cornell for about 4 years. I worked at Cornell as a senior coordinator to a regulatory associate, regulatory supervisor. 2 to 4 years, I think I had two promotions. Then from there, I moved to Northwell Health, where I became a site director. Um, then I also moved to Icon, which I have became a CRA. Therefore, I was CRA for a little bit. Then moved to Dendrian, where I was a global trial manager for managing pharmaceutical studies across different parts of the world. So I'd say my journey from the site all the way to pharma companies is very unparalleled, and
Yeah.
it's not traditional, because
Uh-huh.
usually you hear pharma companies or CROs expect people to have CRO experience before coming to be a CRO,
Yeah.
and my path has been kind of, I usually feel like I'm not sure I have some grace on me or whatever, but I always feel like my path is not traditional, and there always things always just work out for me in some way, shape, or
Yeah.
form. And I feel like it's also because I'm very curious, right, very very curious person, and I wanted to know, I wanted to learn, which is again one of the reasons how I got into clinical research, because that I was assistant there in the clinic. That sparked my curiosity to find out what are you guys actually doing. How can I help? Is this something worthwhile? Because I remember one thing the doctor said to me. He said, "Clinical research is not a career." So he said medical assistant is not a career. When I was a medical assistant, he said it's not a career. You should definitely look for something else to do. I went to PS. I did my pre med. I was going to go to medical school. I did pre med. My ambition was go to medical school. Then I did. So when I did the pre med, I was done with that at Hofstra Academic Center, Hofstra in Long Island, New York. So when I did that, my teacher, my one of my professors said, I made him. I said, "Listen, I don't think you're going to medical school." And I've been working in clinical research for about 5 years at the time. He said, "Well, it's a medical school. It's fine, you know. If I want, I wish everybody could be a doctor." He said, "But listen, there's a thing. If you want to go to medical school, you're looking at 4 years in medical school,
Mm-hmm.
2 years or 3 years in residency, 2 years
Yep.
fellowship. So at the end of it, you're looking at a 7 to 10 year lifespan before
Mm-hmm.
you can actually actualize your medical doctorate
Mm-hmm.
goal." I would say you can look
Mm-hmm.
at that 10 years and put that 10 years in clinical research. You already have 5 years in clinical research. If you put 10 years plus that 5 years, that's 15 years in clinical research. You can do a master's degree, you can do a PhD, and you can be so great in clinical research, like one of the top percent, then in that 10 years, you'll be one of the regular doctors. So,
Yeah.
so he said that. I'm like, isn't that interesting?
That's a really interesting perspective. And it's cool that like what the trend I'm seeing is you're asking for that feedback
Yes.
and thoughts from individuals who are they're experiencing it, they're living it,
Yep.
and you really took that in. And I actually really loved what you said. I wrote it down here that things just seem to work out for you. And it's so interesting because I'm a big believer that everything happens for a reason, and
Yep.
that the more in tune with yourself you are and reading your gut and going with those instincts,
Yep.
like it may be a really windy path,
Yep.
but you're going to be led to where you're supposed to be. And
Totally.
I feel like that's what you're saying, like you're very in tune with yourself, and that's happened, and you've used that curiosity. And I 100% get what you say now when you say you have the 360 degree um, of this, because again, I wrote this down because you, after the sites and you said you were study coordinator, and then you did regulatory.
Yeah.
So you worked in regulatory for a while. And just for any of our listeners who may not be as familiar. So the regulatory group works with the regulatory bodies like the FDA in the USA, MHRA, and that's UK, I believe, right?
Yeah. EMA for
So when
Europe.
you were doing that, yeah, how long did you do the regulatory stuff?
It's so funny because as a matter of fact, it's a good one. I'm also currently doing like consultancy for site and companies right now.
Right.
When I moved to Northwell Medical Center in Long Island, one of the roles I was hired for, and I'm gonna come back to your question. One of
Okay.
the one of the tasks I was hired for was to create a career pathway, and also create kind
Uh-huh.
of a consortium of the entire, because they had multiple sites, multiple clinical research being dispersed across New York. So my goal was to bring everybody under one umbrella for the Department of Medicine. So we had 13 divisions, and I had to bring
Oh,
everyone under
wow.
one umbrella. We were looking about 35 coordinators.
Wow.
And this responsibility was handed over to me, and I told the PI, yes, I'm gonna do this. But one of the major things I did was to split the goals, and to create different
Yeah.
career pathways, because there is always a ceiling. If you look at the industry, there's a ceiling. If a coordinator works for, maybe they start a career as a clinical research assistant, right? They work for about a year and a half, they get promoted to be a
Mm-hmm.
coordinator. After coordinating for about 2 years, they become a senior coordinator. That's kind of the ceiling, right?
Right.
They're looking at their manager, right? Their manager's looking at them. After 2 years of being a senior coordinator, they start looking for exit, right?
Right. Right.
So
Yeah.
my goal, so you're looking at a time span of 3 to 5 years of a coordinator, of somebody being at the site.
Yeah.
But my goal was to, how can I keep them at the site longer and
Right.
get them a career pathway that gives them a future, you know.
Yeah.
So I did an interview. So when I did interview all the staff, with all the coordinators, I said, do you enjoy seeing patients more or more paperwork? You know,
Uh-huh.
and it's so funny because you can see, I had one lady, Mona said, I hate paperwork. I love seeing my patients. So that told me that she doesn't like regulatory stuff, right? She just
Yeah.
feels very weird having to deal with regulatory submissions. I'll be coming back with questions. She feels like, where am I going to get all this? Great patients are easy. I can just deal with them. I can speak to them. They're going to, like, it's easy for me, good and go, right? I
Yeah.
said, okay, I'm going to create different pathways. If you want to be a coordinator, you can be a clinical research coordinator, your pathway. I'm looking at this. You can be a coordinator, a senior coordinator, a clinical research specialist. You can move to different, an assistant supervisor. So I created all these different pathways. Then on the regulatory side, I said, well, if you're a coordinator and you don't want to be a coordinator anymore, you can switch to become a regulatory coordinator. Right, we just focus on paperwork,
Mm-hmm.
regulatory submissions. You could be regulatory specialist, you could be regulatory affairs supervisor, you could be regulatory affairs manager. So all these different
Mm-hmm.
pathways that I created. And when you asked about the question of being a regulatory, I love it because after being as a coordinator, and there are two things, right? Working at a small site gave me the
Mm-hmm.
ability to handle all the responsibilities. Right. I
Right.
did a
Right.
coordination, I did drug administration, like I did a whole bunch of stuff. I did regulatory
Right.
submissions, I had monitoring visits. But when you move to a big academic center, everything is very
Mm-hmm.
dispersed, diverse, right? It's so decentralized. There's a
Yes.
team for blood sample, there's a team for this, there's a team for that. So that was the
Yes.
idea that I actually brought into Northwell. And I saw when I was a senior coordinator at Cornell, I'm like, you know what? I think I'm done seeing patients. I think I'm done.
Yeah.
Yeah, I feel like I'm done. you know, I
You
said,
wanted the paperwork.
I said, you know what? I thought I'd do paperwork because again, there's a lot of flexibility as well. You can work from home, right? Let's say you can just be very independent. As a matter of
True.
fact, our regulatory team was very independent, so much that you can just have your headphone on your desk and not having to bother anybody. So for the most part, we had this big office space where everybody have their cubicle. You can have your headphones on and just do your thing. You could be there for 8 hours, no problem. Right. I loved that because
Yeah.
sometimes I just want to work in silos. But I was so regulatory. I
Right.
think I was in reg for about 2.5 years. About 2.5 years I was in
Oh,
regulatory. Before moving on. Yeah. Sorry, that was a long answer to a very short question.
wow. No, that was full of such amazing information. I really love your approach and how you talk to that end user
Yeah.
and you broke down what they do into multiple parts. I'm making a little symbol. Sorry, it's for my editor. I apologize. Can you hear my dogs barking?
Yes.
Let me yell at them really quick. Let me yell real
Okay.
quick. Okay. Just for my editor. Okay, so I absolutely love the approach that you took where you talk to the end user and you actually ask them about different aspects of their role to figure out what might be like to branch it off like that. That's honestly, that's brilliant. Like, that really is. I mean, it seems so simple when you say it, but I don't know that if like I were in that position, I would think that way, you know? So, I mean,
Yeah.
I've never had to try to create those career paths for anyone, but it seems so simple, but, and so obvious, but I bet most people wouldn't even think to do that, honestly.
No, it wasn't.
Okay. So after,
Yeah,
go
sorry.
ahead, go
I
ahead.
was just gonna say it wasn't. It was. I mean, it sounds so simple. Now I'm saying it right.
Yeah.
It wasn't easy at all because that I did that for the first 6 months
Uh-huh.
of for the job on the job.
Oh, wow.
I just having to check because the teams were so dispersed across the entire New York. Most of my
Yeah.
time I spent in the car just driving from one location to the next and just next and next and next.
Oh,
Especially with the first 2 months because I was introducing myself to the department. All these doctors, they don't know who I
right,
am, and I'm just this guy, this new
right,
guy, research guy hired for the Department of Medicine. Like, who is this guy?
right.
I had a big vision for bringing so many changes and so many things, but people don't really like change as much. you
That's
know?
that's very true. It's funny, isn't it? We're in an industry where change is constant. And yet, yes, some people are still so resistant
Yeah,
to it.
yeah,
Yeah.
totally, totally.
That's amazing. Okay. So after doing all that in the regulatory, then you became a CRA. So you went from like being the person at the site to the person who went out to visit the sites.
Yes.
And were you working for the CRO at that point, or you were working for a sponsor?
I was looking for a CRO, and one of the things I always tell people is that the best CRAs are there were former coordinators or former site personnel, because it just makes sense, right?
It
And
makes
this
sense.
goes for all the
Hmm.
CROs out there, right? CROs are launching the Bridge program, which I think is brilliant, right? To launch the Bridge program, where I know MedPace does it sometimes. I think
Right.
Icon also does it sometimes. It's a brilliant idea to bridge the gap. It's very competitive, and to be honest, it's very, very, very competitive, which is hard for people to actually get into it. But it's a brilliant idea because the best person who will go to the site is somebody who has been at the site. When I was a
Right.
CRA, I was very I wasn't, maybe I was a cool CRA because when I actually visit the site some of the things I'll do is I'll come in because I know that coordinators do a lot. You know, they're not
Yeah.
just on my study, they probably have 10, 15,
Right.
20 studies they're running. Why should they
Yeah.
pay attention to my data, right? And how to incentivize.
Right.
Well, incentivize not really like bribing them or anything, but I just feel like appreciating them. You know, like
Right.
sometimes I just like buy lunch for everyone. Like, hey guys, I'm gonna buy lunch for everyone today. Everyone
Yeah.
that's in the office, it doesn't matter. This is usually out of my personal income or personal, finance, whatever. But the goal was to keep the relationship because at the end of the day, that's what it comes down to, right? Keeping the relationship.
Yeah.
Because when you look at psych, as one of the challenges that CROs face, it's not, I mean, apart from
Hmm.
engagement, site engagement, and patient engagement and all, it comes down to
Yes.
relationship. How you keep the relationship with the site, and if your site is
Yes.
happy with you, which is the CRA is that connection between the site and the sponsor. If the site is
Yeah.
happy with the CRA, the site will pay attention. They will engage the patients more. They will put your data in. They will respond to your queries on time. They're gonna be happy with you. So it really comes down to
Yeah.
maintaining the relationship. But I always say the best CRAs are those that have worked at a site because they have the site perspective. They understand the challenges. They understand how to communicate with the site, as opposed to somebody who just came from some kind of CRA academy from wherever and
Yeah.
just coming here on site without probably any knowledge.
I think that makes so much sense to me. It absolutely does because you they understand what they're going through.
Yes.
And I feel that one of the things I've heard, because it's interesting how even when I attend TMF type events and conferences, sites always come up, CRA discussions always come up. Um, and the reason for our listeners why that's interesting is because um, the site itself maintains a collection of files that we call the investigator site file, which
Right.
is different than the trial master file, which
Correct.
if any of our listeners follow me, they know that's my expertise. And there's usually a big disconnect between the CRA and the TMF because the CRAs collect them. They usually send them internal to someone such as an in-house CRA, and then it goes to TMF. But it just never fails that this discussion comes up. And it's because at the end of the day, a happy site is going to be more successful.
Yes.
And there are so many times where sponsors or CROs forget about the end user.
Yes.
So when you have
Absolutely.
a CRA who used to be at that site, they used to be the end user,
Yep.
that makes such an impact. And actually, correct me if I'm wrong because it's not my expertise, but there are a lot of CRAs who they make it their career to make these connections. Like it doesn't even matter who they work for. So they could go from working with this sponsor to this sponsor, or this CRO to that CRO, and they've already got these relationships with sites, right?
Oh yes, and I think that it's very easy because to date, I still have this contact of some of the CRAs who end up become good friends. When I was a coordinator,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
that's because now if they've had a good relationship with my site and they've moved to another sponsor or another CRO and they're launching a new study, they'll recommend my site, right? They'll be like, "Oh, we have this
Right.
site
Right.
that we work with. They are great. That's how they build that
Right.
relationship over time." And I think it's something that sponsors have to really take advantage of, or even CROs,
Yeah.
because if you have CRAs who they are your assets, right? Your CRAs are your assets.
Yes.
They're not just going there to do data review, SDV, and whatever.
Right.
They are there to do that, but to also create a positive relationship with the site.
Yes.
Keeping the site um, engaged in the study, because when the sites are engaged in the site are likely to pay attention to the patients, and the patients will be engaged in the study, and the patients will be retained in the study to the end of the
Yes.
trial, which is in the end goal. If you look at it from the, in the end,
Yep.
that's what the sponsor actually looking for.
Yep. 100%. That's amazing. No, that's wonderful. And I want to go back to something you mentioned and kind of talk about it is the bridge programs.
Yeah.
And this actually I feel like falls into your wheelhouse completely with what you do now because you help people build their careers and
Yeah.
find those career paths,
True.
and bridge programs are a really big part of that. So why don't we talk about that? Why don't you start by explaining what these bridge programs are?
Yeah, I think the bridge program is a brilliant idea, and for somebody who may not know what a bridge program is, it's an opportunity that CROs, not really sponsors don't really care.
Yeah,
They sure
I'd
care
I'd
though.
agree more. I've seen it in CROs. Yeah.
The CROs
Yeah.
create this opportunity to because especially if they are doing like CRA drive, like they want to hire more CRAs, more skillful professionals to be CRAs. They trust that a coordinator has been working at a site. So the criteria are usually you've been a coordinator for like 2 years, you have a bachelor's degree. That's usually the major thing. Being a CRA, a CRC, being a coordinator at a site. They might not be very specific on therapeutic experience because they're going to teach you That CRA Academy usually run for 6 months, some run up to a year. So from 6 months up to a year. I know that
Yeah.
MedPace does it, Paraxel does it as well. I'm not sure I haven't seen it for IQVIA, but I know MedPace and Paraxel are for sure because
Hmm.
I've actually seen them. So when they do these programs, it's very competitive, right? Obviously, because everybody want to be a CRA for some reason, which I don't know why. So, they'll
Yeah,
look.
it's funny because I've heard so many who get tired of it because of all the travel. So it is funny to hear that. Yeah.
So everybody becomes, when they'll launch this program, they'll have a date that they want to have their, the application. So you people are gonna send the applications in, and when you get applications, they're gonna review it, the process and all that. So I've never been, just full disclosure, I've never been part of the CRA program. I've not been a reviewer of the program, but I've known folks who have gone through that program, and
Yeah.
so they've gone through the program, they review that, and of course they accept the candidates. You're gonna come in, you go through the training process. They will usually start you off. It's a paid program. It's not like unpaid or anything, and you're not paying for it as well. So because the goal is they want to retain you to be a CRA. So they're going to train you, teach you everything you need to know. You begin your career as an in-house CRA after upon completion of the training, in-house CRA. Then soon enough, you start having to shadow, a co-monitoring. You start performing co-monitoring visits with another CRA, with a senior CRA, and eventually you become, solid enough to handle your visits by yourself. So that's pretty much what the bridge programming is, and pretty much ties into exactly what we're doing right now at YANA Careers, because what we're doing, we're really helping professionals bridge, because we have a lot of
Hmm.
folks who are coming from, foreign medical graduate, nurse, and healthcare professionals, and everybody else, right? Those who want to break into clinical research, I have PhD scientists, like everybody who want to break into clinical research, and for some reason there's an excitement in the air for clinical research careers, which I like it. Um,
Yeah.
they want to. So what we do is we help them to identify the gaps in their career, in their experience, right? Identify the gaps, fill those gaps with knowledge and skills, hands-on tools, experiences that they can actually work on, and of course those translate into their resume, into their LinkedIn profile. Then we also do their preparations through interview prep and job support, job application support, and all that. So we help people place them, assist them through that process. So we kind of also put that bridge. But again, one of the things that is unique about what we do is we're unique on using your skill sets for exactly where you are in your career. Not like one size doesn't fit all, right?
Hmm.
Not everybody's going to be a CRA. There are folks that I can look at their career and say, okay, based on this you've done in the past, you're qualified to be a CRA, right? For example, I'm working with a nurse. She's been a 5 year, a nurse with 5 years of experience. There's not much for you to be a coordinator for anymore at this point, right? You're gonna learn
Hmm.
the terminologies and everything you need to know in clinical research, but at this point you're targeting more of clinical trial educator position and also CRA roles, right? But for somebody who is coming from basic science, I'm like, all right, you need to learn the clinical stuff. You need to be as a coordinator to have that hands-on clinical experience is important because it's going to translate for you becoming a good CRA if that's your pathway you want to follow in the
Hmm.
future. So that's kind of how we work, to guide professionals fit into different categories and different roles in clinical operations.
So, like, I can 100% see why you're in a role like this, having the experience that you have and that knowledge. But what made you want to make that shift from pretty much being in it to being someone who guided the careers of others? What made you make that shift?
It's so funny because when I start about my career, right? There's something I want to say as a matter of fact. So when I was a site director at Northwell, I was gonna hire. We're looking for a nurse, a research nurse. And I was like,
Uh-huh.
how do I hire a research nurse? So I went on LinkedIn, posted a job, hiring for a research nurse. And I remember my manager, the very first manager that I had in that small clinic, she was a research nurse. So I called her up. I said, hey, Judy, are you looking for a job? She said, no, but what do you have really? I said, well, I have a job for a research nurse that we're hiring for. If you're up for it, that I can hook you up with a manager with a PI for you to interview. I'm not gonna interview you because of conflict of interest. Um, so
Yeah.
she ended up interviewing with a PI, and they gave her the job, and she was reporting to
Uh-huh.
me. so, so it's like a
Revolt,
split,
roll switch.
exactly, a real switch. But one thing that I learned from that experience is connection, right?
Mm-hmm.
Networking,
Mm-hmm.
relationship, because we
Yes.
kept a healthy relationship throughout the years. That was like about 8 years gap, but we kept that relationship, and I could call her up and said, we have this opportunity. And that's exactly what I teach people, because I said, no, your resume might not even get you a job. You might be a very solid candidate, but you will apply to 100 jobs and you might never get it. Not that you, I mean, I said connections and relationship is what gives you an opportunity, especially in clinical research in these times, you know. But back
Yes.
to your question about looking at the flip. I didn't have much I didn't have much training. I didn't have much hands-on. I didn't have a coach who guided me on and gave me. There were mistakes I made in the in my entry level that I wish I didn't make. You know, I post a lot
Yeah.
of content right now on LinkedIn about tricks and tips on
Mm-hmm.
how to do this, how to do that, how to. There's somebody I spoke to a couple of weeks ago, and she said, "Really, I have a stack of all your infographics on my wall." She said, she
That's
said, I
amazing.
print them every time you send them on LinkedIn, and I'm so dedicated to it. So every morning, I usually put between 7 to 7:15 Eastern time, AM in the morning. So as soon as she posts, I like the post. Sometimes I forget to like, but I just take a screenshot of it. I take a screenshot of it, I keep it, I print it and put it on the wall. So if you come to my desk, I have your posts all over my wall. I'm like, oh my God, what have I done to these
Oh my
people?
gosh, did that like does your heart just warm hearing that? Like I'm glad you actually brought up your LinkedIn. Like that's how I found you and asked you to come on because I follow your content too. I love your content.
Thank you.
I'm not even a CRA or anything like that, but I find it so informational. That it's so informative. I love again. Same thing. I love your graphs
Right.
and images and everything you put on there. It's just it's so wonderful that you're like sharing this knowledge. I'm that type of person too. Like I want to share knowledge.
Yeah.
And I really think that it does take a special type of personality to want to help and share and train. Not everyone likes to train, and not everyone's a
Trust
good
me.
trainer, right? I'm sure we've all
For real.
experienced that, but I can definitely see that in you. I can see that you love that. And I think it's really cool that you took your experience and your knowledge and your passion for wanting to help others, like some of those pitfalls you fell into,
Right.
and like, and you turned it into this amazing opportunity. And you do it for any of our listeners. If you don't follow Rudy on LinkedIn, you need to, because he does have fantastic
Thank you so much.
content. And actually one of the things that I noticed when on your posts and all, as you talked about like not having a degree, like you didn't have a degree or anything. So, and people ask you this, they ask you, oh, I don't have a degree, Rudy. What do I do? How do I get into this industry? What do you tell them?
I mean, I had a degree in business, right? But I didn't have a degree. I didn't have sort of a PhD or
Like a
MD, a
sciency
fancy
type.
background kind of stuff, because
Yeah.
that's always one of the that's always one of the myths that we can always demystify, because it's always the question of people always feel like clinical research, you have to be some kind of this doctor, this little big white lab coat, and just sitting in the lab and just playing with conical flasks and all these glass tubes and all that. There's that mindset. But I think there've been a big shift. There've been a big shift since COVID, and shift and exposure as well. That's giving us the ability to, for the industry's kind of open up, right? It's kind of opening up to see for the outsiders, so to speak, quote unquote outsiders, right? To see what's this clinical research thing all about, right? And I'll say that you can be a successful clinical research professional with passion. Passion is great
Yeah.
because if you're passionate, well, you don't have to be as much as I am. But if you're passionate, it's gonna be successful. If you're passionate, you're gonna be successful. But to your
Yeah.
question, the response I always give to people who ask this question is, you don't have to have a science background at all. They are. I had this guy who was from construction, right? Who said, "Really, my
Oh,
wife
wow.
is." Trust me, I've seen a lot. Not, of course, not all, but I've seen a lot of things. And this guy is from
Yeah.
construction, and he said, "Really, He said, "I'm a construction project manager, right? I want to be in clinical research." So, okay,
Mm,
what can we do? I can see your project management skills. We can split that. We can use that. We can revamp that. We can twist that. Then we're gonna throw you into some of the clinical research training. Then blend all of that together to revamp your profile, your portfolio. And I said, that's exactly how we can do that to help you. Are you on board with that? And I said, let's do it. You know, and that's one of the things because your skill set, your experience, whatever you've experienced in life, right, is preparing you for this moment, right? I know one of the things we talked about very early on was when I said things always just work out. It's not,
yeah.
I mean, there is grace that I believe in, but there's also the curiosity and the ability
Yeah.
to learn, because one of the challenges I see people, I had somebody who she's been a scientist for 25 years, right? And she want to move to clinical research. And I spoke to her, I said, listen, you're going to try to unlearn a lot of things that you already know. She wasn't very happy with that. I said, you're probably going to unlearn a couple of things that you know about, science, because your knowledge of science is really ends at the lab. But now we're going to move out from the lab into the clinic. There's a transition that you're gonna have to learn,
Mm-hmm.
and she wasn't very happy with that, because she wasn't open to learning that transition. Her mindset was still kind of stuck in the lab, in the lab mindset. And I
Mm-hmm.
said to her, listen, for you to be able to make that bridge, for you to be able to make that shift, it begins with your acceptance to understand that you don't know everything, number one, right? Yeah, to be honest, because I said, the way I
Yeah.
speak to people, I was like, I'm gonna be very honest with you, and sometimes it's gonna hurt. you know,
Yeah.
sometimes it's gonna hurt,
But you
but
do it in a kind way. I
yeah,
can
so yeah.
tell. I can tell.
Yeah. So I said, that's I just tell her, like, you're gonna unlearn a couple of things, but it's gonna be all for good. We are making this big switch to a clinical research career. There are things like there are new terms you're gonna hear, you're gonna learn, you're gonna bring forth to. There are new preparations you're gonna have to get and if you're starting a career from the bottom, there are things you're gonna have to be comfortable with because you're gonna be working with somebody whom you might even be older than, whom is gonna interview you. So you gotta be comfortable with
Yeah.
that. So these are all some of the pitfalls that people kind of like think about, criticize themselves, and be like, maybe I want to do this, maybe I don't want to do this. But I always tell
Yeah.
people, listen, your experience, whatever you've done in your life, whatever you've done in your career, and prepares you to be a successful clinical research professional if that's the next step for you.
Yeah. Oh, that's amazing. You've got like I'm gonna have to go through and grab some Rudy quotes just out of this because they've been amazing. But I want to ask a couple things from what you said here. So
Yeah.
the first one is I'm curious because I've been in the industry for over 12 years and I got a bachelor's degree. It's not anything science related. I literally just have a business management degree.
Okay.
But the sad part is even though I was doing my job and I was excellent at my job, it was necessary for me to be able to advance, which is
Mm,
really frustrating.
mm, mm.
Do you feel like you've seen a shift where even if people, let's say someone literally doesn't have a degree at all, but
Right.
they've been in the industry for 10 years or whatever, are you seeing that shift where it's no longer, and this kind of leads into a second question,
Yeah.
um, is looking beyond the surface level
Yeah.
of a job description.
Yeah.
And like, because I liked what you said about like that project manager guy, like he may not have any clinical research,
Yeah.
but he was a project manager. How can we connect that?
Yeah.
Are you seeing that shift? So like you might have someone who the job description says you have to have a bachelor degree and they don't have any bachelor degree, but you're like, you're going for it anyway.
I mean, I like that because I had this lady, she reached out to me. She had worked as a coordinator for 15 years, right? And, she's sick and tired of the site. She's been working at the site level. She's like, I want to be a CRA. I want to be a CRA. My first question,
Yeah.
why do you want to be a CRA? That's my first question. Right. I mean, the site is comfortable. Especially if you're raising a family, be like, okay, it's not as much, it's not as hectic, especially for academic center, right? But she reached out to me and said, really, I've been at a site coordinator for 10 years. I want to be a CRA. I don't know how to. I said, okay, can I have your resume? So she said her resume. I did not. I saw a high school diploma. I'm like, okay, high school diploma. You've been at a site. For you to become a CRA, they always ask a bachelor's degree. I said, I'm going to be very honest with you. You will need a bachelor's degree to be a CRA because almost 95% of CRA positions
Mm-hmm.
require a bachelor's degree. I said, well, here's a game plan for you. Why don't you take, she said, oh, no, I did a 2-year associate's degree. I said, great, that's great. Now you have your associate's degree. Just say to yourself, I'm going to spend the next 2 years get my bachelor's. Because you've
Mm-hmm.
been at a site for long, they can give you a lot of flexibility, right? You can have a lot of PTO time or whatever time, right? Use that
Mm-hmm.
time to study hard. Use that time to get yourself together. That 2 years, get the degree. And at that point, you have 12 years side experience. With your bachelor's degree, you'll be an excellent CRA, right? That was the game plan for
Mm-hmm.
her. And it's just, but again, I've seen situations where people's academic achievement becomes a hindrance because the industry is so, I'm looking for a better word, it's so
Yeah.
high profile because we're
Yeah.
looking at PharmDs, MDs, nurses, PhD. There's a high bar for academic achievement for somebody because you see a PhD looking for an entry level position in clinical research, right? You see an MD, a foreign medical graduate.
Yes.
This guy has 5 years of experience as a medical doctor. Comes to the US and said, "I want to start as a coordinator. I just want to start somewhere." Now you're looking at this guy. I'm looking at somebody with a high school diploma. Who are you going to hire, right? I'm going to hire the guy with a foreign
Yeah.
MD because he can be more than a CRC at the site. He can be more than a coordinator. He can
Yeah.
actually maybe assist with patient care to
Mm.
some extent, right? So there's a very high knowledge bar that is in the industry, which makes it difficult for somebody who has less than a bachelor's degree to actually grow. That is just what it is.
Yeah.
And I think that is something that we see in the industry. And I've seen this trend gradually improving. And now the next question people always ask is, do I need certification? Well, you do not need a certification. You certainly do not need to have CCRP or ACRP or all those things, right? But it might be nice to have, not must have, right?
Yeah.
It might be nice to have, but certainly not a must have. Now, if you're working already in the industry as a coordinator, you'll be like, okay, you know what? I want to be a CRA. Okay, one of the ways for you to put yourself out there or to be unique, to stand out, is to get a certification, right? Get
On
a
top of
get a
it.
CRP,
Mm-hmm.
get a whatever on top of that. That makes you more competitive than somebody who
Mm-hmm.
doesn't, right? Because again, I still don't know why people want to move from where I love people want to be CRAs. I might need to do a survey for that. Uh,
Yeah, make your own study. I'm going to make a study on what is the draw? I'm actually really kind of sad to hear that it is still such a big thing in the industry.
yeah.
Because again, like it doesn't, I know when I started the CRO many years ago, and you had to have a bachelor degree, but the thing is, they didn't care what kind it was. And I don't know if that's still the trend, but they really don't seem to care as long as you've got that bachelor degree. And it's like that is just still crazy to me, but that's a whole nother discussion, Rudy. We won't get into, but but this has been an amazing conversation, but we're about out of time. So before we wrap up, I just want to give you the opportunity to tell our audience that where they can reach you, because they're going to want to reach you after listening to this, Rudy. I know that. So where can they contact you and connect with you?
Well, you can contact me at my name, Rudy Malle, on LinkedIn. I'm not so popular, but if you search me you will find me.
You're very easy to find, and you do a great job. Your picture pops up, like everyone will know it's you, and everyone should follow you because your content really is fantastic. So LinkedIn's the best place.
Yeah, LinkedIn's the best place. If you want to check out some of the things we do, you can check out YANAcareers.com, just to check out what we do, some of the services that we provide to support the community. If you can't find YANAcareers.com, put me up on LinkedIn. I'm going to send you a link.
Yeah, hopefully after this, you'll have an inflood of people coming to you. I know I was literally thinking while we were talking, like, dang, if I were looking for something, I'd be coming to Rudy, because I really do. I love your philosophy and your thoughts and everything. This was an amazing discussion, Rudy. Thank you again so much for your time. I really appreciate you joining me today.
Yeah, I'm glad to be here anytime. Thanks so much. It was great.
This brings us to the end of today's episode. I want to extend my sincere thanks to our guest for sharing their inspiring journey. If you'd like to connect with them, you can find their contact information in the show notes. I also want to express my gratitude to you for joining us on this exploration of the clinical research industry. I hope you found today's episode insightful. If so, please consider leaving a review on your favorite podcast platform. It truly helps us reach more listeners. If you have any feedback, questions, or comments about the show, feel free to email me at podcast@iceconsultingllc.com. Thank you once again, and I look forward to having you joining us on our next episode of Heart of the Trial.